Om Sri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namaha. Hari Om students. Children, in today's class, I am going to discuss about our Indian Constitution features. In our previous class, I explained about constitution making, how many articles are there, how our intellectuals, they work 2 years of minimum, 2 years, 11 months, 18 days, approximately 3 years, 165 days. They worked together and they adopted different ideas from different countries. We all discussed that one. Now today I am going to discuss about key features of our Indian Constitution. Children, open your textbook and follow the textbook thoroughly. In one word, this is our Indian Constitution. So our Indian Constitution in its current from March 2011 consists of one preamble page, 25 parts containing 450 articles and 12 schedules, 2 appendices and 97 amendments to date according to 2011. Now 101 amendments completed to our Indian Constitution. Although it is federal in nature, it also has a strong unitary base, means powers distributed between the states, and even though the ultimate power in the hands of union government, that is nothing but our central government. So these are entire constitution given as fundamental rights, directive principles to the states, and fundamental duties to the citizens. Now I am going to explain each and every one of these briefly. Here, supremacy of the constitution, that is a main important thing about our Indian constitution. So whatever the government it might be in central level or state level or in any level, they must have to follow the instructions given by our Indian constitution. So division of power, here one more feature is that power is distributed between the central government and the state government and the third tier government. And the existence of an independent judiciary in the Indian Constitution. So one more thing is independent judiciary system, our Indian law and order. So no one has the right to question our judiciary system. So our judiciary system checks and balances the government works and other functions. And here, what are the unitary features? In our India, we have only single citizenship. We have one and only constitution. The power of union to override on the state matters. During emergency, the system became virtually unitary. At the time of any emergency, wars or healthcare facilities or any droughts or any other natural calamities, at that time during emergency, the final decision by our central government only, children. And changes in the names and the boundaries of the state by the parliament itself. So whatever the to give the new states, to change the names, to allocate the boundaries between the states, everything is done by parliamentary only. And then we have the integrated judiciary system, means local level, district level, after that state level, and after that we have national level. Supreme Court is apex court of our India. So that this integrated judiciary system helps a lot to the nation. And then center appoints the governors. So all Indian states government appointed by our Indian government only. And then dependence of states on the center for economic assistance and grants. So to do any work by the state government as well as by the local self-governments, the particular percentage of amount is given by our Indian government only, central government. So that these are the main features of our Indian constitution. So that it so far from past 70 years onwards, we are following the same constitution, but there is no problem. But according to the changes, we are modifying our laws and added some new laws to the existing laws, children. Open your textbook and follow the lines here. Key features: by the beginning of the 20th century, the Indian national movement had been active in the struggle for independence from British rule for several decades. During the freedom struggle, the nationalists had devoted a great deal of time to imagining and planning what a free India would be like. So, the preparation of Indian constitution is not happened within one day or within 2 days. So in the year 1928 only, first time our Indian constitution made by Mr. Motilal Nehru, father of Jawaharlal Nehru. 8 members helped him to prepare constitution for India. That is before independence. After that, during the independence time, once again, our Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the father of our Indian Constitution, along with his members of Constituent Assembly, they made wonderful constitution for our country. Under the British, they had been forced to obey rules that they had very little role in making. The long experience of authoritarian, so the long experience of foreign rule made our Indian constitution wonderful. Under the colonial state convinced Indians that free India should be a democracy in which everyone should be treated equally and be allowed to participate in government. Uh, what we got here, the authoritarian, so the British rule made our people to think towards the democracy. So democracy runs maximum on the principle of on equality. Here everyone is equal. So everyone have the equal opportunities. Everyone have allowed to participate in government, children. So that democracy is suggestible by near 181 countries of the world, not only by India. What remained to be done then was to work out the ways in which a democratic government would be set up in India and the rules that would determine its functioning, so that then when they decided to follow the democratic form of government in our country, immediately they are planning what kind of rules and regulations we have to choose, from where we have to adapt different rules and regulations. In this way they work a lot. This was done not by one person, as I told in your first video, not only by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, not only by Jawaharlal Nehru, not only by Surendranath Banerjee or our many people, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Abdul Kalam Azad, many people, nearly 300 people who became members of the Constituent Assembly, children, in 1946, and who met periodically for the next 3 years to write India's constitution. As I told, it takes 2 years, 11 months, 18 days to complete our Indian constitution, nearly 165 days. They assembled together, they discussed about different ideas of different countries, and finally we adopted our Indian constitution on November 26th, 1949, children. What these people done? These members of the Constituent Assembly had a huge task before them, because our India is not a place of a single community or a single religion. Understood clearly. Here, the country was made up of several different communities who spoke different languages, here belonged to different religions like Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, Christians, and had distinct cultures and festivals we are celebrating, children. Isn't it? Yes. In our country, many language people, many religious people are living together. Then how to make the constitution for diverse people of India? How made these all Indians under the control of one Indian constitution? That is a big question in front of our constitution makers. Also, when the constitution was being written, India was going through considerable turmoil. What is the one? The partition of the country into India and Pakistan was imminent. Some of the princely states remained undecided about their future. So as you know that 1947, it is a great, it is had incident, and it is considerable as a turmoil, a big sorrow to India, and the partition of the country into two parts, Pakistan and India. In this situation, what we have to do? So many princely states like Sikkim and Jammu and Kashmir, so they're still constantly not deciding anything, so they don't know what they have to do in future. And the socio-economic conditions of the vast mass of people appeared dismal. So society complete in the situation of war, and economic conditions of the people very poor, because the people are unable to purchase their daily needs also at that time. All of these issues played on the minds of the members of the Constituent Assembly as they drafted the constitution. So by observing these all the things of regarding this Hindu-Muslim wars and the partition and different religions. The Hindu are majoritarian in our country, and then Muslims and Christians are considering as a minority based on the population percentage in India. So that by thinking all these things, they prepared wonderful constitution to us. They rose to the occasion and gave this country a visionary document that reflects a respect for maintaining diversity while preserving national unity. This is very, very important, children. Here they are maintaining national unity, so without disturbing our national unity, they tried to give a beautiful constitution to us. Still we are following. The final document also reflects their concern for eradicating poverty through socio-economic reforms, as well as emphasizing the crucial role the people can play in choosing their representative. So they want to follow the democratic form of government, so that they want to give the crucial role to the people of our country to choose the representatives according to their wish. So in that process only, every 5 years in our country general elections are conducting. In that the people of our country means the citizens of our country, voters, can cast their vote and elect the representative whomever they want to elect. And here, children, I am going to give some key features, important key features of the Indian Constitution. While reading this, keep it in mind that the above mentioned concerns of diversity, unity, socio-economic reform and representation that the authors of this document were grappling with. Try and understand the ways in which they try to balance these concerns with their commitment to transforming independent India into a strong and democratic society, children. Be it in mind. Understood? Now I'm going to explain you about key features of Indian Constitution. In the part of the key features of Indian Constitution, first one, federalism. What is meant by federalism? Federalism is nothing but sharing powers between different levels of government. Means more than one level of government in the country. So in our country, we have, as you know that, we have one government at state level and their government at central level, and the Panchayati Raj is the third tier of our government. And we looked at the functioning of the state government in your class 7, and this year we will read more about the central government. The vast number of communities in India meant that a system of government needed to be devised that did not involve only a person sitting in the capital city of New Delhi and making decisions for everyone. So it is not suitable a country like India with diverse population people and diverse languages and diverse religions here. Understood. So in central in Delhi, one person who is taking all decisions, it is not fair. So that our constitution makers decided to share the powers between central government and state government's children. Understood. And then the third tier government also included in the year 1982. While each state in India enjoys autonomy in exercising powers and certain issues, subjects of national concern require that all of these states follow the laws of the central government. The constitution contains lists very detailed that issues that each tier of government can make laws on. So our constitution given a clear view of decision making power. What kind of laws have to made by central government, what kind of decision can be by the state government, all are mentioned in our Indian constitution, children. In addition, the constitution also specifies where each tier of government can get the money for the work that it does. So, constructing roads and electricity facilities and drinking water to the people, healthcare facilities, education to the people, and providing some subsidies to the people. These are all done by our state governments as well as central governments too for its entire population. So that to do these all works, to give the salaries to the government employees and all, for they need a lot of money, so that they mentioned clearly what kind of tax can be collected from the people, how to use those money, all mentioned in our Indian constitution only, children. All person in India are governed by laws and policies made by each of these levels of government only. These levels of government must have to follow the instructions of our Indian constitution. There is no doubt at all. Now we will see about features of federalism. The first feature of federalism is, children, it has two or more levels of government. As I told that central level, state level, and then local self-government. And each level has its own power or jurisdiction. Each and every level, state government and central level, they have their own powers and they have their own jurisdiction power. At central level we have Supreme Court, at state level we have High Court, and local district level we have district courts. And jurisdiction is specified by the constitution, and there is constitutional guarantee of authority. So this jurisdiction powers mentioned in our constitution only. There is no other people have the right to choose different vote decisions. Here constitutional provisions can be changed only with the consent of both levels of government. So when they need to change the constitutional provision, they have to take the voting of the both central level and state level government's, children. And here court interprets the constitution and power of different levels of government. That is, Supreme Court is the umpire of disputes arise with different levels of government, and then sources of revenue are clearly specified. These are the major important key features of federalism, children. See here, Supreme Court is the umpire if disputes arise with different levels of government. A dispute between state level versus central level, dispute between local self-government with state government, disputes between citizen to citizen, disputes between one state government to another state government. These are all disputes solved by our Supreme Court itself. So that sources of revenue also clearly specified, how many taxes they have to collect, from which sources, everything is mentioned in our Indian constitution. So that the federalism is a very successfully, this federalism very successfully going on in our nation. Here our Baba Saheb Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who is known as the father of the Indian Constitution. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar believed that his participation in the Constituent Assembly helped the scheduled caste people and they will get some safeguards in the Dalit drafting constitution. But he also stated that although the laws might exist, scheduled caste still had reason to fear because the administration of these laws were in the hands of caste Hindu officers. He therefore argued scheduled caste to join the government as well as the civil services, so that he suggested all Dalit people to achieve more education and to achieve important position in the Indian government. And due to that, given some reservation system also to the nation's people. What are the main objectives of federalism? To safeguard, promote the unity of the country is the first objective, and the second objective is to accommodate regional diversity. These two are the main objectives of the federalism, children. So here in this lesson, many times we use the word state. State here is a subject of national government, children. So in our political science, actually, we are using the word state for our nation. It doesn't mean to state government. So here, government is responsible for administering and enforcing laws. So the government can change with the elections for every 5 years. The state, on the other hand, refers to a political institution that represents a sovereign people who occupy a definite territory. That is meant by a state. So it is not in any one person's hand. Sovereign people, each and every person have the right to take any decisions internally and externally, and there is no third person can interfere in the matters of us. It is applicable for state as well as applicable for our national government. So we can thus speak of the Indian state, the Nepalese state, etc. The Indian state has a democratic form of government. So the government is one part of the state, so that the state refers to more than just the government and cannot be used interchangeably with it. Understood, children? Here we use the state word as a symbolism to our entire nation. State means here a government, a national government. Okay, understood? And second important feature of our Indian Constitution is parliamentary form of government, children. What is meant by parliamentary form of government? Now I am going to explain you. The different types of government that you just read about consisting of representatives who are elected by the people. So we are the people electing our representatives. Your class 7 book began with the story of Kanta, who was standing in line to vote during an election. The Constitution of India guarantees universal adult franchise for all citizens. To choose our members for parliament, our Constitution provides a great gift to us, that is voting. Elections, universal adult franchise. So universal adult franchise means the person who are completed the age of 18 years, irrespective of their religion, region, gender, state and other places, they can cast their vote to the representative whomever they want to wish. So here you see the first time general elections held in the year 1951, so that the people, they standing in queue lines in this way. Those all are conducted in a tent like shape here. When they were making the constitution, the members of the Constituent Assembly felt that the freedom struggle had prepared the masses for universal adult suffrage, and that this would help encourage a democratic mindset and break the clutches of traditional caste, class, and gender hierarchies. So to avoid this all discrimination in the society, they implemented elections, choosing our representative directly by the people. This means that the people of India have a direct role in electing their representatives. Also, every citizen of the country, irrespective of his or her social background, can also contest in elections. These representatives are accountable to the people. You will read more about why representation is crucial to democratic functioning in Unit 2 of this book. So, this is our Parliament Bhavan. Sansad Bhavan. It is located in New Delhi. This is the full view and here is the front view of our Indian Parliament. India's central legislature or union legislature is known as the Parliament. Legislature means a law-making body. Parliament is the one and only highest law-making body in the country, and it consisting of President and two houses, namely the Lok Sabha and are also known as House of the People and the Rajya Sabha, Council of States. Or we have House of Commons and House of Lords, Rajya Sabha. And Rajya Sabha is also known as Upper House and Lok Sabha is also known as Lower House. So the members of the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha are called as members of Parliament, MPs, as you know that. The Parliament holds its sessions, meetings at Parliament House or Sansad Bhavan in New Delhi. So a Parliament contains President and Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So these all together we called as Parliament. So it is the highest law making body of the. Look here children, two houses of Parliament. One is Lok Sabha here and the one is Rajya Sabha. The green carpet one Lok Sabha and here red carpet one Rajya Sabha. And see here, the Lok Sabha is the lower house of the Parliament. At present, it can have up to 545 members only. Present, we have only 543 members. And though the Constitution has provided for a maximum of 552 seats in the Lok Sabha, the number of seats will remain fixed at 545 till 2026. Up to 2026 in our Indian Parliament, we have only 545 members. These 545 members directly elected by the people of all the states, including union territories. What it means by each and every part of the state have to take the place while decision making. So with that intention, our Lok Sabha seats distributed to all the states according to the proportion of the population, means voters here. So all members of Lok Sabha are elected directly by the people only, means we are the people who are completed the age of 18 years, including your mother, brothers and your eldest grandmothers, grandparents, everyone included in this population. So that for every 5 years they went to election polling booths and choose the representative with the vote. The President of India may nominate up to 2 members from the Anglo-Indian community if enough members are not elected to represent that community. So if all the 545 members not included, so 543 people directly from the people, elected by the people, and rest of the 2 people will be elected by our president will nominate them. So one person is belongs to the 2 persons is belongs to the Anglo-Indians, non-residential of India. And the Lok Sabha has a normal term of 5 years. As I told, for every 5 years in our country we are conducting general elections. But it may be dissolved by the president before the of its term. Also during an emergency, its term may be extended for 1 year. So the president has the highest power to postpone the elections or to prepone the elections whenever it is needed, whenever it is emergency situation in the country. So that is about Lok Sabha children. Who are eligible to contest in Lok Sabha elections? To stand for elections to the Lok Sabha, a person must have to be an Indian citizen at least with the age of 25 years. Understood? What is the first condition? He must be an Indian citizen and have to complete the age of 25 years. Should not be bankrupt or mentally unsound. He should not uh, have to pay any bankrupt debits to the bank. So you need not to take that person, or that person mentally stable. Mentally unsound persons are not eligible to contest in elections. Should not hold any salaried government job. He is not a person of getting salary from the government. These are the main conditions to contest in the Lok Sabha elections for citizens. Anyone can contest in elections if they have the following these qualifications. How the elections conducting for Lok Sabha? Every constituency elects one representative to the Lok Sabha. So how the Lok Sabha constituencies are divided based on the voters of the particular village. Nearly 7 to 8 assembly constituencies are made as one Lok Sabha constituency. A candidate who contests elections may belong to a political party or be an independent candidate. So anyone can contest in elections, maybe from any political party, like national political parties like Bharatiya Janata Dal Party, RSS, and Congress political party, and Aam Aadmi Party. So many political parties are there. They can contest elections from any political party, and also as an independent also they can. The candidate who gets the largest number of votes becomes the elected representative of the constituency in the Lok Sabha. All Indian citizens, so who got majority of votes, that person can consent to the Lok Sabha. All Indian citizens aged 18 years and above can vote in the elections and choose their representatives. This is the election procedure for Lok Sabha. As we discussed in Lok Sabha, I told that one president is there, and then Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Here one more person is there, that who presiding the Lok Sabha, who is known as the speaker. So here speaker can maintain the punctuality and discipline of the Lok Sabha. The Lok Sabha members select the speaker from among themselves. The speaker conducts the proceedings of the house and maintains order within the house. Sometimes after a debate, the speaker takes a vote on the issue. So if any certain controversy decisions are there, then the speaker asks the people to give their vote. Usually the speaker does not have any vote, but if there is a tie, he can exercise a casting vote. That is what we call as a deciding vote. Actually only the members of Lok Sabha, they have the vote, but speaker they don't have any vote. But if any tie in any decision, then the casting vote or deciding vote gives to the speaker here. Then the speaker generally belongs to a ruling party but has to act impartially. The Lok Sabha members also elect a deputy speaker who presides over the house in the speaker's absence. So one speaker is there and one more deputy speaker also is here, and here deputy speaker act as speaker when the speaker is in absence to the Sabha. Understood, children here? So we have one presiding officer for Lok Sabha who is known as the Speaker of Lok Sabha. Most of the times this speaker belongs to the present ruling party only 100%. Next about Rajya Sabha, the upper house. The upper house is Rajya Sabha. So Rajya Sabha is the upper house of the parliament. It can have up to 250 members, including 12 members nominated by the President of India. Here, the elections for Rajya Sabha purely indirect elections. There is no direct elections to Rajya Sabha. Children, note it. Direct elections here, not elected directly by the people through the voting system. Then who can elect these people? So the representatives of peoples like MLAs of states, ministers of states, and the lecture government employees, teachers, and graduates of the nations, these people will elect the members. At present, the Rajya Sabha has 245 members, among them 12 nominated and 233 elected indirectly. The elected members represent the states and union territories. More populous states have more members representing them. For example, if you take Uttar Pradesh, in Uttar Pradesh we have 80 Lok Sabha seats, means based on the population. For Andhra Pradesh we have now only 25. Before partition we have 42. So in this way, Lok Sabha seats also distributed between the state based on the population. And here, the members representing a state are elected by the elected members of the state legislative assembly. These people are elected indirectly by the elected members of the state legislative assembly, all the states. Here, the representatives of the union territories are elected according to rules made by the parliament. Here, these people also participating, but they have to finalize by the parliament only. The members nominated by the president are distinguished. Most probably, I told that 12 members are nominated by the president. So in that, who are given a lot of service to the nation, those people honored with this one. So distinguished authors, from journalists, from economists and jurists, scientists, artists, players, social workers, and so on. Many people are included in this nomination of the president to the Rajya Sabha only, not to the Lok Sabha. Bear it in mind. Among the distinguished people who have been nominated to the Rajya Sabha are poet Maithili Sharan Gupta, scientists like Satyendra Nath Bose, actress like Shabana Azmi, singer Lata Mangeshkar, and journalist Khushwant Singh, and our cricket player Sachin Tendulkar also honored with this Rajya Sabha position. The Rajya Sabha is not dissolved after a fixed term. As I told, our Lok Sabha dissolved for every 5 years by conducting elections. But here, there is no direct elections to the Rajya Sabha, so that there is no dissolved of the Rajya Sabha here. Then it is a permanent body. 1/3 of its members retire every 2 years. New members are then elected to the vacant seat. Each member has a term of 6 years. So after the completion of the 6 years of the term for each and every person, for every 2 years, one third of the members will be retired. The Vice President of India presides over the Rajya Sabha. Vice President of India acts as the Rajya Sabha chairman. Present Dr. Venkaiah Naidu Garu act as Vice President of India as well as the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha. He is the ex-chairperson, ex-office chairperson, because he gets this post by virtue of his office. In the chairman's absence, the deputy chairman preside. The Rajya Sabha members select the deputy chairman from among themselves. So, Vice President of the country only act as the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha. And they have one, in the absence of the chairperson, they elected one more person as deputy chairman of the Rajya Sabha, children. So this is briefly about our Rajya Sabha. And like the Lok Sabha, here also some certain qualifications will be needed to contest in member of the Rajya Sabha. So what are the qualifications needed? Has to be an Indian citizen, aged at least 30 years. For Lok Sabha, we needed only 25 years, but here Rajya Sabha, at least they should complete the age of 30 years. Should not be bankrupt or mentally unsound, as same as, so he don't need to maintain stability. Unsound people are not eligible. and should not hold any salaried government job like the Lok Sabha members only. So only here the difference is age difference, that is 30 years to Rajya Sabha and 25 years for Lok Sabha. The major differences comparison between the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So the Lok Sabha is a directly elected body, whereas the Rajya Sabha is an indirectly elected body. As I told, the people of the nation elected these people representatives, but here the state elected representatives choose the Rajya Sabha members, so that it is called as indirect elections. The Lok Sabha can pass a vote of non-confidence, but the Rajya Sabha cannot have the non-confidence. The highest powers authority given to Lok Sabha because the Lok Sabha people elected directly by the people, but Rajya Sabha don't have such type of authority. And the Lok Sabha can be dissolved for every 5 years. For every 5 years we are getting general elections. After the general election we will choose a new political party as a government. But here Rajya Sabha cannot be dissolved because 1/3 of the members every 2 years they retired from the duties and new people can take place in that. So these are the major differences between Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. And finally, the important function of the parliament is bill, act, new laws to the entire nation. A proposal to pass a new law or to change an existing one is called a bill. Proposal to pass a new law or to change an existing one is called a bill. For example, the partition of the Andhra Pradesh and Telangana as an example. Here, first the proposal bill have to introduced in the Lok Sabha, People's House. After that, that bill first hearing, second hearing, third hearing, then sent to the Rajya Sabha. If the Rajya Sabha people have any obligations on that bill, again they send to the Lok Sabha within 14 days. If second time also the Lok Sabha accepted the bill, then finally that one sent to the President for approval. If once Lok Sabha accepted the bill, especially in financial matters, and there is no way to say no for Rajya Sabha. Making laws is the most important function of this legislature. What is the main function of the parliament is making laws for entire nation. Our parliament can make new laws and also change the existing ones, and they have the power to modify our constitution also. Amendments, what we call amendments. Those amendments also made by Parliament of India only, so that Parliament is the one and only apex law-making body in the nation. And third one, separation of powers. According to the constitution, there are 3 organs of government. These are the legislature, executive and the judiciary. Legislature means law-making body, refers to our elected representatives. In state level we have state assembly, in central level we have our Indian parliament. And the executive is a smaller group of people who are responsible for implementing laws and running the government, like our chief minister, prime minister and ministries. These all people, and IAS, IPS category people, and the government employees like Mandal revenue officer. These all members comes under, and our IPS cadres, IAS cadres. These all people comes under executive who are implementing law and order in the nation. And the third one is the judiciary system, of which you read will more about in unit 3 of this book. Refers to the system of courts in this country in order to prevent the misuse of power by any one branch of the government. The constitution says that each of these organs should exercise different powers. So judiciary system at district level, at municipality level, and at state level, as well as finally apex level is our Supreme Court. So jurisdiction power, here our Indian judiciary is a independent wing, so that they have given suggestions sometimes to our central government as well as to the state governments also. And through this, each organ acts as check on the other organs of government, and this ensure the balance of power between all the three by our Indian judiciary system. Observe the picture here, children. Members of the Constituent Assembly feared that the executive might become too strong and ignore its responsibility to the legislature. So that the Assembly therefore included a number of provisions in the Constitution to limit and control the action taken by the executive branch of government as a whole. So our constitution makers, they think very well, and so to control the powers of the legislature, so they given some particular norms to control the powers of the legislative bodies. See here, children, this is our central government and in our union government. So here our government is divided into three wings, what I said now. So first one is executive department. It consisting our president, vice president and cabinet ministers here. And the second one is legislature of the parliament. Here it consisting a parliament consisting of Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. And the judiciary system consists of Supreme Court of India, High Court of the states and the local courts. And what is the responsibility of the executive department is here to pass the laws made by legislatures. So whatever the decisions made by legislature, that implementation part took by executive department. And coming to the legislature of parliament, they will make the laws for entire nation. And here what is the responsibility of the judiciary system? If any conflicts occurs between the executive and the legislature and to other public related matters or conflicts, thus it solves all the disputes between these all the organs and wings, so that judiciary is an independent wing of the government of India. There is no control power of parliament on judiciary. There is no power to executive department to control the judiciary system or the to advise the judiciary system, but judiciary system has the right to control the powers of the legislator and to control over the executive department also. Because and sometimes if any problems, if any decisions made by the parliament means judiciary system, then our judiciary system can warn the people, and they advise to think once again the decision. So that apex level court is Supreme Court, is the court of India, highest court of India. Harom children, thank you very much, and follow the textbook, read the textbook thoroughly. In our next class, I am going to explain about our fundamental rights and duties of the people. Stay home, stay safe, and read your textbook thoroughly. Complete your work as soon as possible. Harom children, thank you.